Welcome to Which Side Do You Want, where we talk all things tennis. I'm your co-host, Ruffin Thornton, and I'll be joined by my good friend, James Skinner.
Unlike most tennis podcasts, we cover hot topics, from the lawns to the concrete, from the pros to the park, and all things in between. Welcome to Which Side Do You Want?
Welcome back, tennis and racket sport fans, for our podcast. It's at the end of the season, and James and I are here in the wonderful studios here at Another Wave Media in Chesterfield, Virginia. It's at the end of the season, but we've got a little bit of a different format today. We have a special guest, which we're going to get to in a second. But before we get started, James, how you doing, Coach?
Doing fine, Ruffin. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Before we get to our special guest tonight, just want to go ahead and cover out our normal intro stuff. So, again, it's at the end of the season. We are talking about the year-end championships. So we'll start out with, on the men's side, we had the NITO ATP Finals, where undeniable, undisputable now, the GOAT. Novak wins his 7th overall ATP tournament year-end finals, where he took out
Alcaraz and Sinner.
But he took out Sinner in the finals.
Yeah.
And we're gonna put a pin on that because he got a chance to get his revenge back. But we'll talk maybe next year more about Novak and his accomplishments. On the men's side as well, in Davis Cup, the Italian, Jannik Sinner, led the Italians to their first Davis Cup win in the last 47 years.
That's amazing. Imagine? Yeah, it's been a long drought.
And he took out the great Novak to get there.
Yep.
Where they beat Australia.
Yes.
2-0, because they when you win the first two, there's no need in playing that third match. Also, on the women's side, we got to give some love to the women's year-end champion, Iga Swiatek.
Yes.
She took out the American Jessica Pegula. She was on a mission.
She made a statement.
Yeah, she definitely made a statement. Those final 2 sets were pretty much a stamp on her season. Although she didn't win all the Grand Slams like she had in the previous years, but she still had a dominant performance.
Oh, yeah. She proved she's number one player in the WTA definitely. Right now, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. And also on the women's side, you had a new champion in the Billie Jean King Cup. Canada went on and won I can't remember how they won the Billie Jean King Cup, where they took out, of course, ironically, Italy again. Mm-hmm. Led by Leylah Fernandez. So that was a pretty interesting year end with all of the team and individual accolades for the year end. But without really talking any more about the individual, what you want to call results, let's get to our special episode for this podcast, where we have our special guest, Miss Jolynn Johnson-Smith, who happens to be the director of
the Whirlwind Johnson
Tennis Foundation. So, James, since you know Jolynn, let's get you in here to.
Well, first of all, I just I'm happy that Jolynn is with us. Not only is she the director of the Whirlwind Foundation, but she also happens to be the granddaughter of Robert Whirlwind Johnson, Dr. Robert Whirlwind Johnson. Right. And he is known by everyone as the godfather of black tennis in the United States. And we are just honored to have you with us. And I'm very happy to call you my friend. And I appreciate you coming here. But we want to just talk to you first about your grandfather and the legacy that he has started, that we all are a product of.
Right.
The tree, he was the root that started it, and we're all the little leaves and branches that continue to grow. And we just want to welcome you to our podcast.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure.
Yep.
Always excited to share the story.
Yes, yes. And we, the tennis, we've talked about Black tennis in this country in particular. And it's, of course, like with anything in this country, the racial legacy is tarnished, and there's some bad starts, and there's some things we've done in our history that try to keep us from involving and being able to participate in activities and things. But there are always people out there who are fighting to make this change happen, and your grandfather was one of them. And God bless him. We owe him so much, and we're hoping that now through the foundation that the world will get to know more about who Dr. Johnson was and what he really means, not just to Black tennis, but to American tennis as well. Yeah.
So, Jolynn?
So it's interesting that we're having this conversation because earlier today I had to do some sound bites for the USTA Mid-Atlantic.
Okay.
They're having a gala in D.C. on December 1st, Friday. And we talked about a lot of these things. And so in 1933, Dr. J, we never called him grandfather or granddad. Dr. J moved to Lynchburg, Virginia, and decided to build a tennis court at his home, mainly for exercise purposes. He was a football player in college, and he played baseball and basketball, and graduated from Lincoln University back in the day. And so he built this court, and he would invite different players to come there and do round robin matches in the summer, spring and summers. And some of the people, and it wasn't limited to just African Americans, there were people there like Bobby Riggs who played against Billie Jean King. I've got tons of photographs of him. He would do clinics there. And Pauline Betts-Addy, who was another pro in the Washington, D.C. Mid-Atlantic area as well. She was there. Allie Ritzenberg, who ran the tennis program at St. Albans, which, were prestigious, very prestigious boys' school. And so the interesting thing about the tennis court and building that, I think a misconception that a lot of white people have is that Blacks just got into tennis later on in life. And that misconception is so unfair, because Black people did everything that anybody else did. Right. And I think and my grandfather was not a rich man. He was a doctor. He was a country doctor as such, and would do house calls and house visits and things like that. And he would take us on some of these appointments with him when we were obviously young kids. And, we just liked to be with him. So the thing is, he moved to Lynchburg to create his own practice, built his own medical building, which still stands today on 5th Street. And he had the top floors were apartments, and the bottom other space was rented to an insurance company, a barber shop, and a laundromat operated out of there. And I think at that point, Blacks have always had to be entrepreneurial because you just couldn't go in every sector of certain cities. Right. So, for 3 decades, he ran this tennis program, and the best players from all over the country were invited to spend the summer at his camp, and he would find housing for them or provide housing, provide all of the tools to learn the sport, and not to learn it, but to perfect their skills.
Okay.
And he had a ball boy machine back in the 60s. I mean, we love to get on the court and just have the machine shoot the balls out. And he had a rebound net, which was a net on this framed piece of steel that you could, it was like a backboard, but it was a net, and you just could hit the ball back and forth. Wow. And he had his own court roller and things like that. So very, maybe not so common, but for us it was common. I mean, I grew up in an environment where every summer was spent in Lynchburg until my grandfather got sick and died. The older three of us would go all the time, and then when my younger two brothers were old enough to, withstand the rigors of the sport and being out there on the court. And keep in mind, we were kind of secondary to the other players because people were there that were older and better players. I mean, we were just learning. So we were there with people like Lenny Simpson from Wilmington, North Carolina. John Lucas played there for a bit, maybe one summer. Who else? Tam O'Shaughnessy, who was the partner of Sally Ride, the astronaut. She was from Los Angeles. Tina Watanabe from Los Angeles. And Tam reached out to my brother, Lange, before he passed away and made a sizable donation to the foundation. Wow. And so her comment was, your grandfather was very nice to me when I was there. Right. And I think that people respected him, his demeanor. We never heard him yell, but I know he did have a bad temper. He never yelled or anything. And he expected people to conduct themselves a certain way on and off the court. No profanity, no displays of anger or, not to challenge things, because he wanted for the white world to see us in a way that was positive and respective of how he wanted you to be on or off the court. And so, we, of course, Ashe and Althea were way before my time, or any of our time. I'm the oldest. But the thing about Althea, it was the first. And I think people forget about her. She gets lost in the whole thing. Oh, Arthur. Althea won the U.S. Open in Wimbledon, 57 and 58. I don't know which one was 57 or 58, but she was able to win those tournaments. And Dr. J and his friend Hubert Eaton, who was also a doctor, who also had his own tennis court in Wilmington, they worked with her to groom her. Okay. They taught her how to be the country club chick, if you will, as opposed to kind of the rough around the edges person that they met when they first saw her. Yeah. And she perfected that, conducted herself a certain way, and did what was needed. But the other stipulation for him was, you've got to go back to school and finish school. Sure. So she did that, and she was able to, with his help, got a scholarship to FAMU in Florida. And that was another attribute of Dr. J's. He was always helping people get scholarships so they could finish college. And even if you didn't want to play tennis as a career, you got an education and you could take that to another level. Right. So, I did have the luxury of meeting her one time. They named a tennis court in a park in Lynchburg, Riverside, at Riverside Park, after Dr. J. And so Ashe and Althea both came to that. So that was the first and only time I had been in her presence. But the thing is, all the other players, Henry Kennedy from Washington, D.C., who was a Clinton-appointed judge, Princeton, Harvard educated. I could go on. Right. Bobby Cunningham, his family family of doctors from Elizabeth, New Jersey. He and his brother were doctors. And, you know, these are people, all of us basically learn certain life lessons.
Right.
And I was looking at some old articles about him recently, and Leslie Allen had a quote. She played there as well. And one of her quotes was that Dr. J prepared us for a world that didn't want us.
Right.
So, you know, I remember playing these country club matches in D.C., at Indian Spring Country Club, this club, that club, in Fairfax County as well. And for the most part, people were, you know, a little standoffish.
Right.
They didn't overstep and say crazy things. But I did have someone come up to me one day, and I'm dressed in tennis whites, and she wanted to know, did I work there? And had I been thinking on my toes, I probably should have said, do I look like I work here? But you know, we were taught not to be disrespectful, so you know, I just kind of brushed it off. But the other thing is, Dr. J enlisted the help of his neighbors, his friends. He had relatives who were teachers, cousins, nieces of his, my cousins, and they were teachers. So when they were off during the summer, they came to transport these kids to Chattanooga, Kalamazoo, Michigan. The boy next door to Dr. J and his brother, Juan Farrell. Juan Farrell beat John McEnroe in the national 12s and 14s. He was, you know, I call him the heir apparent to Arthur.
He was.
Because he played so well. I mean, he was just one of those kick butt kind of players. And I think that, you know, he didn't have, I mean, his parents lived next door, and he didn't have really the tightest family, you know, examples and stuff. But when Dr. J died, I think that had a tremendous impact on him emotionally. And I've not seen him since, you know, 71, most likely. But he and my two younger brothers were at Southern Illinois together on the tennis team. And my brothers, they didn't stay there. I mean, they had gone around to a lot of different places. But the thing is, I think Juan graduated from SIU and now is a pro in Macon, Georgia. And so, but, you know, just remarkable player. Yes, he was. So, again, Dr. J would haul these kids around. He got Ashe there at the age of 10. Ron Charity, who was someone that I met when I first came to Richmond. It's so funny. I was playing in the Southeastern over at Battery Park. And Ron looked at me and said, "You're a Johnson." And I'm like, yeah. And so we had never met before. But I've heard, you know, stories. My dad talked about these people all the time. So I was playing with another guy, mixed doubles from D.C., and we ended up losing in the finals. But, I mean, it was we had never played before. We were longtime ATA players. So, you know, got to meet him, knew Dr. Watson from Virginia Union. You know, he's another one. He could stand at the top of the hill and yell my name out to me. But, you know, I think the conduit for learning tennis and being tennis players allowed us to develop some lifelong friends, and some of whom I'm still in contact with, either on social media or directly involved. And but anyway, Ashe came there at the age of 10. My father was really Ashe's coach. Dr. J was in the office working, and he would come home at lunchtime and dinner to, you know, when he ended his day. But he would come check up on these kids. And I mean, they knew what the drills were supposed to be. No nonsense. If you did not follow the program, you were out. In fact, he sent one of my brothers home on the Greyhound bus because I think he was beating a racket into the ground and using profanity. So he called my dad and said, he'll be at Greyhound at such and such a time, so come pick him up. And this is back when you just didn't put kids on a bus. He was young. I mean, he wasn't he was elementary school age, but I mean, still a little young. I don't know that I would have done that. But Ashe honed his skills, and Dr. J, the way that he went about integrating the sport was that he was just very tactful and victorious. He was tenacious in how he kind of incorporated his will to get this done without being a militant guy or, I mean, there were people there like Art Carrington, and I would say Art was a little bit more of a militant kind of guy. He would make noise, mouthy kind of person. But Art and, a few others probably didn't last in the program too long, but they did go on and become, great players. Yes. Great players, and he's a coach. So, interesting. Again, Dr. J was able to kind of integrate this interscholastic tournament in Charlottesville. He had a whole team of guys. Some were Lynchburg people across the street that played. Red Cunningham, Elmer Reed. I think Red is deceased now, but Elmer, and I'm just learning of other people that played there on the court. They've seen articles about everything that's going on, and they've reached out to me to, I played in the program. So I ended up working with this woman when I worked at Philip Morris.
Okay.
She was an HR person. I was in management. So I just thought, oh my goodness, where people just start coming out of the woodwork.
Wow.
But it was an opportunity for history to be made. The history was made on that tennis court. The history started on that tennis court. And the interesting thing, when people like Ashe could not do anymore in the Richmond, Lynchburg area, he was shipped off to St. Louis to one of Dr. J's other friends, Richard Hudlin. And Hudlin took him from high school to his becoming accepted at UCLA. So it was almost like, that it's like the saying goes, it takes a village to raise.
That's it.
So he had a village, and that village generously housed these kids, fed them. Dr. J didn't charge them a dime.
Right.
He had an account with Wilson Sporting Goods, all the equipment, shoes, clothing, rackets, balls, and all these other things were provided for them.
Wow.
And the
That's
expectation was that you were going to perform, do as I say, not as I do, and everything will be lovely. And so many of those players were national ATA players that came through that camp. And in fact, I won the 18 and under division at Battery Park. I was 16, and I lost in the finals of the 16 and under, but I won the 18 and under. Thank goodness. But again, lots of history in the lives that were touched by him.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Interesting stuff that you just told us about the history of tennis and what your grandfather meant to Arthur Ashe as well as Althea Gibson. You happen to be the president of the Whirlwind Johnson Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. My youngest brother, Lange, started the foundation in 2015. I think I mentioned before, all of us were ranked in the Mid-Atlantic and within the ATA at some point in time. And back in 98, I decided after my grandfather died to have his home placed on the National Register of Historic Places first. Yeah. And that was kind of a lengthy process because I had to do a lot of lobbying, Lynchburg City Council, city planning, didn't know what I was doing, but I was determined that this was going to be on the National Register, complete some forms, and then it escalated to a point where I had to get an architectural historian to write the final nomination for us because there were a lot of questions around the architecture of the building, the house, and all that stuff that I could not begin to answer. So got that done by 2000, 2001. And then my younger brother, and what happened basically when Dr. J died, he left the house to a woman that worked for him, and she had lifetime tenancy in the home, which meant that none of them could access or, do anything much. But just before she left, I was able to get her to sign off on the National Register document so that we could move forward. And then Lange decided to work with some attorneys out of D.C. to incorporate us as a 501c3. And at that point, the foundation was formed, and we started pulling together things to just kind of move the needle to where we could get the house restored and brought back to some type of tennis and education center, public tennis center. And at any rate, Lange, it was just Lange and I and some other people that he had kind of handpicked. And then in 2020 or 21, he was diagnosed with ALS. And he really deteriorated pretty quickly. So when that happened, I kind of had to jump into double time to get my name on the bank account and things. It was just, it was and still can be, a little trying, to make sure that all of the loose ends are tied up. But anyway, I took over before he passed away. And right after he passed in March of 22, we got a $100,000 grant from the National Trust. And we have a small group. It's a small board, but we have a team that works on grants. My son is on the board now, and we just nominated him to be the vice president. And I've gotten both of my sister's daughters, who are, one is a finance analyst, graduated from Elon, have gotten them both on the board. The other one was a mass media person, did some internships at ABC and NBC in New York. And, she can do, the oral history, and she knows how to film and do all that stuff. So I'm trying to open the door for these young people to take over because I do not want to be it forever. And so once we can get we're in this stage where we've selected an architect. We also are, have done pre and post bids to get contractors. And that's been really the most challenging aspect of never having done this before to figuring it out and making it happen. So now I've narrowed it down to a local contractor company out of Lynchburg. We had people from Chesterfield County reach out, North Carolina. But the thing is, it just makes sense that it be somebody in the Lynchburg area. So the other things that, I'd like to do are have some community engagement where we can go to some churches or do some speaking engagements to talk about the legacy and how important the community involvement would be. And, we've also partnered with UVA, had a meeting with them today, just to talk about capturing the oral history, because when I went to a gala in Lynchburg recently, one of the women there said she had played on the court. And she said, I've got pictures of your grandfather. Stuff I've never seen before. So, it's an opportunity. I'm excited that we are close to beginning to have work done on the house. And people are beginning to know us because our name was mentioned several times at that gala in Lynchburg. And we're on a corridor of Pierce Street with the Ann Spencer House, Chauncey Spencer house is right. He was a black aviator, the son of Ann Spencer, who was a black poet and the first African-American librarian in Lynchburg. And her granddaughter runs the Ann Spencer Foundation. So just trying to collaborate and incorporate different things with other organizations that can help us get what we need and be where we need to be.
Okay, and all of this just to make Dr. J's house a historic landmark.
It's already a historic landmark, but to refurbish the grant was to do the exterior of the home.
Okay.
So we have to be very careful and not go inside and try to be doing things in there. So the contractor, I think we are ready to start working on the roof, and he will do some improvements to the porch, the rear and front porch, which is really exciting. I mean, I just can't wait to see some hammer and nails get to work on this because it's long overdue.
Sure.
And I think that people have been told the wrong story. They never knew what actually what the rationale legally. My brothers could not have been in there because this lady had lifetime tenancy, but also the fact that they were young. I mean, we were young when he died. I was 15 when Dr. J died, and my brothers were, the youngest was 7 years and then 6 years younger than me. So by the time that she was exiting the house, Julian was on the West Coast in Oregon. Lange was in DC, in Fairfax. My sister kind of takes a back seat. You know, she's an attorney, but I kind of loop her in where I need her to write stuff and do things like that for me. And my brother Bobby is, he's the historian. He knows more stories. He knows, he has a memory like no other. So I try to, tap into that. He recently spoke at UVA. They did a thing on race and sports. And the professor that came after him, interestingly, had many of the photographs of Dr. J and Althea, Dr. J and Ashe. But her talk really touched on more than just tennis. It was baseball, football. It was boxing. I mean, it just encompassed so many other areas, so many other sports where Blacks had been impacted. And then, another interesting thing about the house is that during segregation, people like Duke Ellington and Roy Campanella, Jackie Robinson, Marian Anderson, and many others would stay, you couldn't stay in a hotel.
Right.
So they, I think it was part of the Green Book maybe, where they reached out to prominent people in the city and his home was opened up to them. Wow. And so I do remember when he died, we went into the house like after this woman exited and we found it must have been a condolence book, but it really looked like a big ledger thing. And Duke Ellington's name was signed in that book. Now, he didn't come to the funeral. I know for a fact he wasn't at the funeral, but I think he sent flowers or something to, remember him. And, he was also involved in Lifetime NAACP, Omega Psi Phi. I went to Charlotte.
Your frat?
No,
wait a minute.
Kappa.
My fault. My bad. I'm sorry.
I went to Charlotte a couple of years ago. One of my friends who's a Q nominated him for a sports award. And, so, I mean, every opportunity we can to tell the story is important.
Well, Jolynn, I have a quick question. If someone watching the podcast would like to get more information about it or possibly would like to contribute, or how would they get in contact?
So my info's on the website, whirlwindjohnson.org. My cell phone number's out there, email address is out there. They can reach us directly. And there is a spot on the website where you can make a donation. In fact, tomorrow is Giving Tuesday.
That's right. That's right.
Tomorrow is Giving Tuesday. So great opportunity.
Yes.
Look, we're looking, we would take in-kind donations as well. I mean, people, we're going to need electrical, plumbing, anybody that's got anything to donate by way of wood, their hands, if you're good at something that could help us with this endeavor. When the court was redone, some lighting company donated the lights. They put up all these light poles around the court. The fence, may have been part of the USTA piece, but and then somebody offered to donate windows. Now, I don't know who that was because, that's kind of gotten lost when lands transitioned. But I think when we start doing the roof and the other parts of the exterior, people are going to come out of the woodwork.
And just throw back this reminder that the Whirlwind Foundation is a 501c3. So this is a tax deduction. I mean, just to let you know, for people out there who are interested.
And the site to, make a donation is out there and running. So, yes.
Awesome.
Do you also have Twitter or X accounts or
no, I gotta get a youngster to.
I got you.
But we do have a Facebook page, Whirlwind Johnson page on Facebook, and tons of pictures, tons of history, and
that's the real key because we don't know our history, and we can get so much even from a picture,
right?
But
well, I've not been to the Smithsonian African American Museum, but I hear that in both Arthur and Althea's exhibits, Dr. J's name is not mentioned at all.
It's not,
and that troubles me a little.
It's not.
It troubles me.
That is true.
And so I'm also looking for, if there's a museum person, curator listening, we're looking for a place to have photographs and trophies and just a lot of, it's funny. I called, there was something in my brother's office files that I was looking through last Super Bowl. And there was a card with this man, W.E. Clark. And in Lynchburg, and I called that number recently, left a message. I didn't know whether the guy was dead or alive. Just so happened his daughter called me this weekend, and she told me he passed away in 2012. But she mentioned that he probably has tons of stuff about Ashe. She said he had some kind of plates, not plates for the kitchen, but some type of printing plates that maybe the dead, she was telling me he was a photographer. Wow. So I said, look, if you want to donate these to the foundation, I'd be happy to give you credit for doing so. But she says, I'm going to go back and look. But I just thought, oh my goodness.
There's so much stuff out there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's amazing. I'm hoping maybe somebody who's connected with the National African American History Museum would like to, reach out and.
Well, I've had conversations.
Okay.
So I've had those conversations. Okay. Just wasn't the conversation that I wanted to hear. They only would do a rotating exhibit, and then we have to fine tune what type of items we can loan to them, because I don't think they want pictures as much as they want items. And so at the International Tennis Hall of Fame, when Dr. J was inducted in 2009, we had he was in a Doctor of Humane Letters. Lincoln bestowed that honor on him in 1971, just before he passed away. My dad and I drove him up there in May. He was really sick. You could tell he had lost weight, just frail. But he went and accepted that honor. Some cleats from when he played football at Lincoln in the 1920s. His medical bag, and all types of other things that they have in their museum. So whenever you get inducted, everybody gets a little piece of that. But the museum in Newport is not a huge one, but I encourage you to go there. It's phenomenal up there.
We've talked about
doing that.
ourselves.
Yeah, short flight, Philly to Providence, and right on over to Newport.
Casino. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about the casino, but
that's what they call it. They call it.
Oh, okay. But so maybe somebody who's listening would be interested in connecting and helping us catalog. And then another player from the camp, Bob Davis, who was he's on the board of the Black Tennis Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
He called me. He wanted to donate all of his memorabilia to us.
Wow.
And I don't have anywhere to keep it. So I don't have a garage, and I really don't want to be responsible for somebody's
and that needs
stuff.
to be cataloged.
Yeah, and really maintained a certain way with pictures.
Yes.
I mean, it could be a virtual museum, but I need somebody who can do all of that for us.
Yeah.
So also want to start getting the oral history going.
That might be pretty important.
Yes.
More so than anything, because if we can hear it, we could now inquire about more.
Absolutely.
From just hearing about it.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. And with technology being what it is today, I mean, that's very possible. So if anybody out there is listening, the gauntlet has been dropped.
Right.
There's a need for you all to donate. Maybe not, even if you don't have any memorabilia, but if you have some skill sets, this is a great opportunity, a great cause that you could dedicate your time to. And I think, what other high purpose can there be?
It would be great.
Mm-hmm.
It would be great.
Yeah.
So I've just got to, keep the Lynchburg community engaged. And then when I go to this big event, Francis Tiafoe is going to be there.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Well, he will be inducted. As well as some others. Pam Shriver is the mistress of ceremonies.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a sold out event already. So
I'm sure.
I can't imagine who else is there. And I just, the videotape that they did, I think will be pretty interesting for them to see. Here's this guy's granddaughter, and this is what we are trying to perfect. And I think the other message, it was a little hard for them because there was one point in this conversation or taping where they were talking about using the word, they wanted me to use the word segregation. And the guy was like, well, I don't know if that's the better word, or race is, it's really racism.
Exactly.
It was racism.
Exactly.
Let's call it what it is. But I think they wanted to be very careful about how we depicted it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we use segregation. And,
We still understand what it means.
But we know
right,
what that,
right.
Yeah.
So, I'm interested to see how they edit and put that together, because I think that's going to be powerful.
Wow.
And
See that.
I just look forward to that.
Wow.
So I'll share that when I get the link, when they share that with me.
Yeah, we
Definitely.
can certainly pass that on to our audience as well.
Yeah,
Sure.
That would be wonderful. Yeah. We, it's so interesting how so many people who went for so long not knowing who your grandfather was and his contribution. And then when we do know about him, we know his connection to Arthur Ashe and Althea Gibson. But I think his even stronger legacy is all of the professional people out there that he touched, that he helped and helped to direct them to live better lives. That to me is even more powerful, and that is a continuation. It just continues on, because who knows, someone who was inspired to be a professional person and became a doctor and inspired someone else and help. And that's how it works. So to me, that is even
architects,
yes,
judges, lawyers, teachers, every profession that you could imagine. And doesn't matter what it was, but I think all of us got something out of the, when I started working on the thing to get him on the National Register, my brother Julian had also copied all these newspaper articles from ages ago, like the 40s, the 50s, New York Times, Amsterdam News, black newspapers, local Post, and everything. And so I would just sit there and read this stuff. And so, when I was working for a nonprofit, I had a little time on my hands, and I said, this is a time for me to start this. And I never imagined that it would take this long. I mean, I knew when he passed away, we had talked about, what would we do with the house and what can we do or whatever. I'm thinking, I'll be in my 60s which is, fairly true. But, it's taken such a long time to get him into the Hall of Fame in 2009 when Althea and Ashe 57, 58, and then 68 and 75. I mean, really? This man, didn't he deserve to be in there?
Yes.
And the thing that was so interesting about that event was Charles Passarell was there. He, Stan Smith, all of those guys come back because they've been inducted and they come back when they want to participate. But Passarell reached over and he said, congratulations on, this for your grandfather. Donald Dell got inducted when Dr. J did. And that was the first time they have ever had two Mid-Atlantic people being inducted to the Hall of Fame at the same time.
Wow.
And Donald is Jordan and was Ashe, Stan Smith, John Lucas. He was there. He was their agent. And I want to appeal. Now he's made a couple of donations, but these people are living huge off of what these athletes have done. And I just challenge anybody. I need to get this house finished, and I need to get it finished like sooner than later. So if anyone wants to match the $100,000 donation that another former player gave us,
that's $100,000.
$100,000, and we'll take more. I mean, I just challenge people: be generous and help us keep this legacy alive.
Exactly. Well said. Well said.
Well, definitely well said. We need it.
Yes, definitely. I hope that maybe someone listening who may have a connection with a professional tennis player, African American or a person of color, that would also like to.
Francis, we're looking at you.
Francis, Venus,
don't
Serena.
worry, I'll hit him up when I see him.
Exactly. But
I will do that.
And understand that we're all part of that tree. We're all part of that tree, that he was the root, that he was the seed that grew this thing. And you brought that up earlier, that it takes a village. And yes, it took a village to create this. And it needs to be continued. So it takes a village to continue it.
But I also think that some of these people that have hit pay dirt, who never have ever talked about, you got to think about your forefathers. You got to think about the people before you that paved the way. Maybe your dad got you and your sister where you need to be, but there was somebody before that. And I think Althea is often left out of the whole picture, and I think the guys were saying, the guys that I spoke with today kind of mentioned that. I'm like, Althea was first. She was first. So I often want to say Althea and then Arthur. Because she was number one.
And alphabetically.
And the other thing to keep in mind, at that point in time, they were not giving. Women were not getting the kind of prize money, thanks to Billie Jean King and those who have forged ahead with that. But she was not getting the money. She didn't have the support. She basically was pretty much penniless and a recluse. And had it not been for her friend Angela Buxton to reach out to people to help her raise money, I mean, so ironic, ironic. But I hope that, you all will reach out to Michelle Curry as well and have a conversation with her, because it's really enlightening to know that all of these people are out here and we're working toward the same cause. And
it'd be great if we could all come together.
Oh, that would be, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Oh,
again.
Well, thank
for-
you
Jolynn,
for-
thank you.
Thank you for you know, for
Happy
coming.
to be here.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get this kind
Yeah.
of history, this insight, unless people like you to tell the story of your grandfather and some of the history of African American tennis in the country,
Yeah.
in the local area, without knowing someone who went through it. So
Yeah.
we appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
And also, you're our first in studio guest.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Oh,
we wanna-
wow.
yeah.
wanna
Wow.
thank you for that.
Great.
And hopefully, we can get you to come back to
Sure.
to come even share even more.
I have pictures.
Oh,
I've got
please.
tons of photographs
Oh,
with
that'd
Bobby Riggs on the court
Yes.
Oh,
and Althea and Arthur and Dr. J having these very serious conversations. I would love to do that. And
We'd love to have you come back.
Yeah.
Thank you
Maybe,
again.
and maybe we can also get some insight, not from a historical standpoint, but from you as a player.
Personally.
Because
Oh, yeah.
if you were a top level ATA player, you know, we don't get a chance to see other. I mean, the USTA is the dominant organization in the country, but we don't get a chance to really highlight the ATA.
Right.
yeah.
So that would be, you know, if you
Sure.
could get your insight on that.
Yeah.
as well,
And let
that
me
would be
say,
great.
when I played the USTA, I played Harold Solomon's sister all the time. I mean, I got so sick of, you know, it was the first round match, Barbara
Right.
Solomon. And then when I get to the second round, Barbara Solomon. You know, so and my brother played Mark, and you know, it's so, you know, until you get to that point, and then when I got ready to go to college, I played Junior Whiteman Cup in Williamsburg,
Okay, yeah, that's
and that was the best tennis I have ever played in my life, but also played on the men's team at Fisk University
Okay.
in Nashville. So they had a women's team, but I wanted to bang it out with the guys.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, I'm sure you have a plethora of stories, and then and also too, just to come and talk about the ATA.
Oh,
and
yeah.
For anybody that's never been to the ATA Nationals, oh my gosh, I remember when I was a teenager going when it was in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a phenomenal.
We didn't go that far. We
Yeah.
went, you know, DC
Yeah.
and Richmond.
Richmond, right.
But I mean,
Here.
we did play
We
New
were
Jersey
sponsored.
and Philadelphia.
Yeah, we were sponsored, but it's just
Yeah.
that amazing,
Wow.
amazing experience.
Oh, I
that
bet.
just blew my mind. I never
bet.
saw that many great black
yeah.
tennis players, and they were great.
Everywhere.
Yes,
We
from
are
all over the
everywhere.
country,
And
yeah.
that's what I'm saying. We have simultaneously been neck and neck with the USTA. We are neck and neck with them. We just didn't have that exposure. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody was bringing it to the forefront. I mean, good grief. My dad was the tennis coach at Howard for a short amount of time, or maybe
That's
a
right.
longer amount.
Bobby Johnson,
Yeah. And so,
he was famous. Everybody knew of Bobby Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
at Howard.
so, you know, it's really interesting to know this stuff. And like I said, you know, sometimes I just sit back and reflect. One of our friends from elementary school, a guy that has become a tennis pro, he would come to our house, and my mother would have photographs of Dr. J, Ashe, and different people in the foyer on the wall. And the thing that he said about that, it just really almost brought me to tears. He said, you know, I've known these people we went to elementary school together. He was along with my younger brothers. And he said, I would go to their house, and we never really talked about what our lineage was.
Yes.
We never talked about it, really. You know, and when it would come up, you know, it's almost like, you know, you kind of shying away from wanting people to know, you know, this was my grandfather. He was a big deal. But, you know, when we go to the ATA tournaments, and they'd be like, oh, there's Dot.
Right.
Those are his grandkids. You know, and so he just marveled at how we never bragged about him.
Right.
We never talked about it so much. And then, but all we did was play tennis. But then he realized, he said, oh my God, that's Arthur Ashe. Oh my God, you know, this is so-and-so. And, you know, Lange would tell these stories about Ashe coming to play in the DC Bank tournament, and he would pick Lange up and take him to go hit balls with him to warm him up. So, I mean, the girls didn't count, for nothing. So we didn't go. We just went to watch later. But the thing is, these are the stories that are really so important and mean a lot. That this is what he thought about us, and the impact of our family legacy. So,
what do you think he would say if he were here now, if Dr. Johnson, about black tennis, and how far do you think he would feel that, oh man, I did my job, or we think, oh man, we got a long way to go?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be room for improvement. I think that he would be happy with how things turned out. I think for him to be an African American and pick these two winners back in 57, 58. And it was before then, because, it was 40 something that really they must have, become acquainted for Althea. But yeah, I mean, that he was able to do that. Nobody since had really done that. And the thing that troubles me more is that no other African American man has won Wimbledon or the U.S. Open. And it's not that we aren't inches from doing it, but again, where were the people that when Dr. J died, where were the people that had the money to help these people get where they needed to go? It's the resources. It's sponsoring these people, being able to get them plane tickets, get them sponsors. Who is going to sponsor these black people? And again, I mean, I think he'd be proud that we are even, still plugging away at this more than anything. I really miss the fact that he left us too soon and that he didn't get to see our accomplishments because the day he died, he was in the hospital and we'd write back and forth and I wrote him or he wrote me back rather, and he always wanted to know, have you won any tournaments? And I'm like, oh, okay. But, it was just so touching that I got this thank you note from him. I probably still have it somewhere. I hope I do. But the thing is, I just think he'd be proud of how well we all, were able to do things that we've done. But I mean, had it not been for him, where would these people be?
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to, from my perspective, it's interesting how other races can get the sponsorships and the support that they need, but we have not been able to, some of us have not been able to secure that.
And you mentioned that, and when we talked to Arthur Carrington, one of the things he was saying is that they developed as tennis players because it was a community effort. They had clubs, they had black tennis clubs that were
Cosmopolitan Club in New York.
And they would nurture these kids early on. And he said you had these tennis players, pros who would work with them and right in their community. The funny thing he was saying when he was growing up, he didn't know that tennis was a white sport. He thought it was a black sport because all of the people connected from his club were black. And that sense of that community that they nurtured you and trained you and developed you. And he said that's, led to their success in that level for African Americans. I mean, we do have black people at a higher level, but few of them are African American, especially on the men's side.
Right. I mean, we have to, I love Felix Auger-Aliassime.
We do too.
Love him. When he loses, I'm out of sorts. Tiafoe, almost there.
Yes.
Chris Eubank, almost there. But it's funny how for a long time, everybody seems to be kind of stagnant. And then after a bit, the confidence level is up, and here they go.
Yeah. Ben Shelton. I mean,
oh my God, love him.
He's got a bright future.
Yes.
I mean, he could be the one. So when we're looking at, and I was reading an article. We have some juniors coming up. Who look like they have.
Yeah, I can't even keep up with all of them. It's just after they get out there. But again, it's it's a lot to talk about, a lot to think about. So thanks again.
No, thank you. Thank you
very much.
Yes, sure.
So with that said, we're going to wrap up this podcast. Again, for our audience, thanks again for listening to us, and hopefully you will again come back, share your time with us. Again, always, as we always say, remember to hit us up, hit that like button on the bottom, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again. And as we always say, James,
well, play some tennis.
Go hit a tennis ball.